Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I want to take you somewhere. Imagine you're a wealthy real estate investor. It's Monday morning. You're drinking your coffee on the second floor of your balcony outside your luxury home, overlooking the water, getting ready for the day. Now, you'd usually have to wait for an email from someone on your real estate team to send you deals.
Astonish me, pal. New info. I don't care where or how you get it. Just get it.
Or you'd have to constantly scour the internet looking for recently listed properties and run all the numbers yourself. Now, imagine you didn't need your morning debrief from someone else. Now, imagine you didn't have to go looking through Zillow, Realtor.com, any of the other listing sites yourself. But let's be honest, not all of us can spend the money to employ a full-time real estate team to send us deal flow. And even if you did, those employees sleep or take time off or could even miss things. Now, wouldn't it be ideal to have a team of real estate assistants never missing a thing, always on 24/7, 365, deals on your desk every morning, 9 a.m.? Or maybe you aren't a full-time investor. Maybe you don't need a full real estate team of assistants working for you. Maybe you're just looking to passively invest in real estate and you're looking to automate how you get deals currently and make that process just a little bit easier. Then this automation is 100% for you. With this N8N workflow, I have my very own real estate team that constantly has their finger on the pulse. This simple N8N workflow sends me deals every morning at 9 a.m. for me to look through. This simple N8N real estate assistant workflow sends me an email every morning at 9 a.m. directly to my inbox with statistics on the latest new listings within my area, within my market that I'm looking at, with all the data that I need to make a quick decision on if there's good investments to be made or not. If you're new here, this channel is going to be going over everything AI money and the agents and automations you can build to make it. So if you like this content, like and subscribe. I'm documenting my journey from zero to hero using AI tools to get there. Let's get into the video. So this N8N workflow, yes, very basic, very straightforward to build, but I'm going to be starting an entire real estate automation playlist. So if you like this content and want to see more of it, subscribe and stick around for more videos to come. I think this is the perfect foundation to springboard off of and really show a baseline of where we can go from this. And there's so many things we can do just from this strict guideline right here. So I will be referring back to this video on a ton of my future videos. And if you want to see more real estate automations within N8N, let me know in the comments. Or if you want to see something specifically for this workflow, let me know. There's so many ways that we can branch off from this simple workflow. I'm going to be going over it step by step on how I did this, but from a broad overview, every 9 a.m. it runs. I have set parameters on min max price, what markets I'm looking at, minimum bed, minimum bath requirements, and how I want the data sorted. This is a Zillow API call. This will be our direct connection to getting listings off the web. This will format our data a little bit better so we can pass it on to the next Zillow API. This Zillow API gets the current rental estimate for that specific property. Now, for the brains of the operation. This is going to look daunting, but stay with me. We will go step by step right through this. This will be able to calculate your down payment, your mortgage rate, property tax, insurance costs, maintenance costs, how much put in for vacancy, and your monthly cash flow and cash on cash ROI. This will calculate all of that for you and put it in a nice presented bow. Yes, some of those calculations are rudimentary, but like I said, stick with me. The springboard from here on what else we can do with these numbers and this simple N8N workflow. So from there, sends those results straight to a Google Sheets. And from that Google Sheets, an email is sent to you 9 a.m. in the morning, whenever you're drinking your coffee, overlooking the water. Let's get directly into it. I have a blank workflow here, and let's go ahead and give it a name. I'm gonna type in real estate daily fields. Okay, now we need to add a trigger, and we're gonna go on a schedule. Now you can go through any one of these on how often you want this to run. I'm just gonna click days. And I'm going to go 9 a.m. and so you can test here. Now, one thing that I do want to point out before we jump right into this, kind of your workflow on getting checks and balances to make sure that you're staying in the right. So whenever I go through this, I'm going to be testing a lot and making sure that all the data is correct. And honestly, in N8N, whenever you run tests, it makes it so much easier to connect a lot of the different nodes together. So I think that's a good habit to get into. So next, let's do set. It'll be edit fields. And you can go in here and add all the fields that you want to be passed on as parameters to the next API call. So for example, I'm going to add a lot of these fields here. And first, location, Austin, status, for sale. Now, it is important how you name these fields because it should match up with the documentation of the API that you're using. This will make sense a little bit more, but if you're following me directly, just make sure that this for sale has the same capital casing and so on and so forth. If you're not following me, you'll have a better idea once I get into the next step. I'll highlight over what I'm talking about. Price, min, sort selection. This will just be how it's sorted from price ascending or descending. This price A is directly from the documentation of the API that I'm using. Some of them do have different documentation on how you want it to be sorted. You don't have to sort it any certain way. I'm just going to do it in this video. So that's what that price A means if you're a little bit confused. And then for last field is multi-family, and I'm just going to put true. This is the only one that will be not a string. Is multifamily true? You can obviously change that up however you like. For this example, so ran a test. This is how we're looking at it. We have our location. This will all, like I said, this will all be passed over to the next node. So how you want to look at it in N8N, this is obviously the stuff you're getting from your prior node. This is what you're doing in this node. This is what will be passed on to the next node. This is a good visual. This is the JSON version. This is the schema version. So the JSON version is most likely what the next node will be using and how you pass it on. So we tested that. It's good. Test was successful. On to the next. So for the next, we are going to go to an HTTP request. So if it's not a natural connection to N8N, such as Gmail, Telegram, Slack, any of these over here that you see natural connections for, you will need to use an HTTP request. This HTTP request is how you will connect to whatever API you're using. So for this, I'm going to be using Rapid API. You can search through a lot of their APIs. How I like to think about it is Rapid API offers a really wide array of APIs that you're able to connect. If it's not a natural selection within the environment of N8N, I'm going to be using an HTTP request. And if I'm using an HTTP request, Rapid API will most likely have something for me to use. You'll notice there are a bunch of Zillow APIs within Rapid API. I'm using this specific one. If you use a different one, just know the documentation and the parameters on how it's passed on might be different. So this is what I was saying on the last step, that the casing matters. So for instance, this for sale was what I was directly talking about. So if you're using a different API, don't worry, it'll still work, but just make sure that your documentation matches what you're putting in N8N. For this, I'm using the search for properties by neighborhood, city, or zip code. You can see that you can pass on location, status, pretty much any of these you can put in that set node previous to this one, and you can really refine your searches if you want to. I'm not going to go through the entire documentation, but it's there, and that's what it means. So getting back to N8N, we obviously have to have a URL, and we have to have a bunch of other stuff to get this HTTP request to work. So for this URL, you're going to need to pull from your API, and this is your API host. So that is the host URL. The way I like, it's kind of different. A lot of the documentation on some of these APIs is a little bit different, makes it a little bit confusing, but you can use that host. And then if you look over here on, this is the URL that's going to be passed through. This is hard coded in. So after this search question mark, the location is set on this API call to these parameters. And you can test these endpoints and play around with this to see how it actually works and how it changes this URL. But this is hard coded in, but this basically says location equals Houston, output is JSON, and status is equal to for sale. This is pretty much how those URLs are structured and how you will structure your URL with some of those set points to get some of your final search criteria. So you will need what's before this question mark. Like I said, this is all hard coded in. We are passing on our own data into that, but what's before that question mark is what we need. So we add that there, and then we go down the line of authentication. So this is not already set up. We will need a generic auth type. And what that means is it's not already in the environment of N8N, like I've mentioned a couple times. So we are going to go header auth, and you see that I already have mine set up, but for this, you will go to there. I named mine, I just copied that over. And what you're not seeing is my Rapid API key. That is the key that you will put in here to get it to work. So next, we need to send our query parameters. So you can pretty much just go in here And to make this a little bit easier, we are going to run test. You can see that now we have all these on the left. So we can type in location, and we will use this location to pass it on. So that's kind of where the structuring of what's outputted here is important. So I will just go down the list and input all of these in. Okay, now let's test that setup. Invalid URL. Oh, know what it is. Let's test if that worked. There we go. We see we got the output. That's why testing this every single time within the node is very important to see what kind of data you're getting out, or if your node even works to begin with. That works. On to the next. Now, as you saw in my example, I had to split out. Actually, before we do that, let's make sure we're doing proper N8N, and we are naming all these. So 9 a.m. trigger. This will be really important whenever you're using some of the coding nodes and actually calling on specific nodes for specific things. So that's very important that we need to do this now. Rename Zillow search. So now next we are going to use the split out node. What this says is it turns a list inside items into separate items. So the reason why I'm doing this is, as you see over here on how this data is outputted, you see results and then brackets 0, and then the next property is 1. It makes it a whole lot harder for nodes in the future to be able to call on other properties within this outputted data. So I'm going to be formatting this data just a little bit better so that our future nodes can kind of access it and play with it a little bit better. So I'm just going to put in results in here and then no other field. And pretty simple, but it makes a big difference. And this is the easiest way I found to do this and make it all work. If you have a better idea or a better solution, I'm all ears. So you see here, kind of outputted 41 items. Again, it's not within that bracketed results. That should be a little bit easier for our next nodes to kind of digest and use. On to the next, we are going to do our next HTTP request. Now, the reason why I have two Zillow API calls is because one of them obviously is for the search function, and then I had to find another one that does the rent estimate function. So that is why I'm doing this, and that is why there's two Zillow API calls. I will go back to the documentation, and I honestly went in here and was just looking at all these. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot of different things with a lot of different API calls within here. But like I said, this one's rent estimate, and that's the one I chose to go on. This will be HTTP Zillow 56 API /rent. So I'm not going back in there because I'm probably tired of blurring out my key, but you saw how I kind of got the last URL, and this is the exact same. So it's just that same URL with the additional tag of, with the additional tag of whatever was in that output. So it's just going to be the exact same kind of setup. I'm going to use my exact same authentication, and I'm just going to do query parameters, and I'm going to set this to address, and I'm going to double brackets JSON greet, and this needs to be an expression. So this gave me a lot of trouble whenever I was trying to do it originally, and this is just the easiest way that I found to kind of go through that. Now I'm going to set up headers in here. Headers is basically another way to go into the authentication, and with the credentials you shouldn't need it, but host, and then I'm going to paste this value in here. These are all values from within here, within the code snippets of the rapid host and the host there. Just pretty much putting the host, the name and the host in there. Now, a very important step on this is to add this option for batching. If you don't, you will get a rate limit error and you will not be able to go past this step. We're going to go 1 and we're going to do 2000 milliseconds. So pretty much what that means, it's going to be passing one of these batches through every 2 seconds. Whenever you're executing this, know that there's obviously 41 or 40 batches, whatever there are, and it's going to be doing at 2 seconds. So if it takes a little bit longer than what you thought, that's why. Nothing's broken. It'll be okay. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and test. So like I said, this will probably take a while, but this is what we need to do to get around the rate limit. So it's done. And we need to see if we got the, okay, so we got the rent estimate. So that's the whole reason of this HTTP request. We didn't have that before and we needed it. So this rent estimate is what we needed. And actually nice that it has a range of high and low. So you could actually format your Excel document with some variance in there, which is kind of cool. Okay, so on to the next. So we're done here. Make sure you rename this to rent estimate, as that'll be important in our next step. So that next step, we're going to get the code node. This code node will reference those prior nodes by name. So that is why it's super important to make sure you have the correct name in there if you're following along step by step with me. If not, and you know what you're doing, feel free to name them whatever you want, or don't name them. That's totally fine. So pretty much what I did was I asked Claude directly what I wanted and gave it broad characteristics of what I had and what I was building. And what I found was that it was very important to copy the input data and say, this is what my data looks like into this code node. This is how it's structured, because there seems to be a disconnect on how Claude thinks the data is being structured within N8N and how it's actually being structured. And then also another important thing is to give it exact names of your nodes and what those nodes are outputting, because it seems to forget often that you have separate nodes and that those separate nodes are relaying different data that is important. I would definitely say the most important thing is remind it how the data is structured and remind it of the nodes that is passing on the data that it's using. Pretty much this is pretty basic code here for what we are going to be doing. But as you can see, it gets the property tax, insurance, maintenance, the estimated rent, it saves that as a variable. So it's getting kind of the monthly incurred expenses, what your mortgage payment will be, and the total purchase price and down payment to kind of give you a annual cash flow, a monthly cash flow, and a cash flow or a cash on cash ROI. So like I said, this is pretty basic, but this is just amazing that we can do this with such a simple step in an automation that I don't have to do this, or it'll be even more amazing whenever we build off this. Like I said, this will kind of be the first of many in this real estate playlist. So if you like this, please let me know in the comments, or if you want to see some different things within the code variables or what other financials we're actually drilling into. I'm going to be making a lot more videos on that and kind of showing you a lot more structured output on what we can do with a lot of this data, which seems super cool. But for now, we're just going to get the property tax, insurance, maintenance. But for this example, I'm going to have like this. So we're getting all those monthly expenses, vacancy rate, and the cost occurred with that, the cash flow, and the cash on cash ROI. So let's go ahead and test this. And boom, you see that we got a structured output, and this is what our output looks like. Gives the address, the price, beds, bath, square foot, what type of house it is, the rent estimate that we had so much trouble getting, down payment that it calculated, all the investments part of it here is what this code calculated. So like I said, we can go way more into these numbers and give even better insight into what kind of investment potential it offers or doesn't offer. So closing costs, total investment, your cash on cash, and your total monthly expenses. Now that we tested that, we see our output, and we are going to keep chugging along. So now we need a place to store those outputs. So for the ease of use and the ease of following instructions of this step-by-step tutorial, I've already made a Google Sheets, named it Real Estate Assistant, and have a sheet named New Deals. Now, whenever we make our Google Sheets, we are going to click the append or update row in sheet. This is just the easiest way I found to do it. If you have a different way or you think you found a better idea, go with that or let me know in the comments. So for this, I already have my Google Sheets account credentials in here. If you don't have yours, you can watch my video on how to set all that up. It will not be hard at all. I'll link it here. And we're going to go right down the list. We're going to append or update a row from list. That's the document from list. We choose, and this will automatically auto-populate. So real estate assistant, and the sheet will be in there, new deals. So this will automatically map each column. That's what this error is. And so what we can do for all these columns, or all the columns that we want displayed in our Google Sheets, we will put that as a column. And I'm just going to go right down of everything that I want. So address, price, rent, estimate, cash on cash ROI, monthly cash flow, and I want to keep this document concise because, like I said, it's kind of like a morning debrief. Here's your daily deals kind of message. And let's just put down payment in there. The reason why we did that is so we can go in here and we can click retry, and it will automatically upload the values that we need to send to it. So then this one you can still grab from. So address, price, and then just go down the list and input all the values that you kind of want to see. And we can go ahead and test step. And this should work. Oh, and I actually need to put that in there. So we need to put address in there, test step, and there we go. Yep, and see, now we got full data. So last but not least, we need to get notified here. So this should be pretty easy. I'm going to use Gmail. There's another email trigger that you can use, or email node that you can use, but Gmail is the easiest. And I'm just going to send a message. I already have my Gmail account. Pretty easy. I have the linked video to setting up all the Google OAuth credentials. And then operation send. We can also do any of these. We're going to send. And then put in the email that you want to send to. And subject, I'm going to put daily. And I'm going to copy this command over and then go to expression. So this command, you can pause it and copy this. It'll pretty much, this is what it will output. It'll just put the date on there. More visually appealing formatted email. For this message, I'm going to keep it brief. Probably will get more intricate as we build more things, but hey, here are your deals for today. And then I'm going to just send the link of the Gmail. Make it pretty easy. Oh, very important step here is execute once. So since we have this in batches, remember, and we split up all the data, it will send 40 emails if you don't click execute at once. You can also go in and add a merge node before this email, but for the sake of keeping things simple, let's just execute once and that should do it. Let's test step. And one output item. Now to check if we got an email. And here's our sheet in here. Perfect. And pretty awesome that we were able to set this up for the amount of time that we spent putting in versus the output that we're getting out. I think there's a very good lever that we're pulling there. If you want this automation, let me know in the comments. I can send it to you directly, or if you want any of the code, I can send it as well. But make sure you tune into future videos if you like these AI automations, and especially more of a finance kind of approach to it, to where we're looking at real estate. I'm probably going to do some stock videos. And like I said, I'm going to be building a playlist and building off this exact framework of more things that we can do, pulling in agents, adding LLM nodes, adding a lot more things that will be able to consume this financial data that we're giving it and output a breakdown of whether it's a good investment, bad investment. So if you liked it, smash the like button, and until then, see you in the next video.